So think, just think. We're going to be here for however long. All of us just, listening, including me, listening, believe me, thinking, checking, listening for some tools. That's the thing. It's got to be practical. It's got to be practical. I always think if this was cooking class, if I just raved on about how nice cakes were and never gave you one recipe, when you'd demand your money back, Well, the same here. So you've got to listen to it as advice. Listen to it as advice. You mightn't want the advice. It's okay. You don't have to take it. But that's the way to hear it. As practical. Something practical. So to do what? Practical what for? Well, tools to help us become this marvellous person that Buddha says we all can become. He's got his views kind of pretty outrageous of what we are capable of for our sake. And of course, because we all live in this insane asylum together, this insane asylum together, we're very social beings, then for others' sake as well. The two wings of the bird, wisdom and compassion. Bird needs two wings. Compassion is the wish to help others. But that's not what makes you help others. That's wisdom. As His Holiness says, compassion is not enough. Got to have wisdom. So with this in mind, we sing our little prayer that expresses this. The second two lines express this altruistic motivation. The first two lines express our reliance on the Buddhist teachings and so on. If we figure we are already Buddhists. If not, then you don't have to worry about that. Sangye charang soke chognam la jangcho badu dagni kyab suchi dagi chönyen gipe sonam ki drola penche sangye drupasho sangye charang soke chognam la jangcho badu dagni kyab suchi dagi chönyen gipe sonam ki drola penche sangye drupasho Sangye charang soke chognam la jangchu baru dagni kyab suchi dagi chönyen gipe sonam ki drola penchir sangye drupasho. So what we're discussing is what's in Rinpoche's book, How to Enjoy Death, which is available from Wisdom as a hardback, and you could also alternatively download a PDF from FPMT, which is a slightly different version of it, but that can be, for your PDF, can be free, for your e-reader. But it's basically, it's Rinpoche's teachings started off, as I mentioned yesterday, in 2003 in France. I'll say it again, where Rinpoche, he was giving another teaching at the centre there, Institute Vajrayogini, and then one of his older students came up and said Rinpoche, her father had just died suddenly, and she didn't know what to do. So this is, I think, not untypical, Here we are, many of us have been Buddhists for years and years and years, and we kind of know all about death because Buddha, has it in your face all the time. But unless we really studied this stuff, that's what I got from having to edit this book, you've got to really think of it deeply and be educated. It's like educated, not just thinking you like it, liking it and knowing about it vaguely, but educated in it, Then we know how to live our life well, so we can die well, so we can get another decent human life, or bare minimum, another decent human life. Next slide. But here the book, of course, has to be addressed to people who help people, because, a lot of the advice is what to do after you're dead. Well, you can't do that, I'm sorry, you've got to have someone do it for you. So the book is addressed to helping, addressed to helpers, which of course is us. And it's addressed to helping our loved ones. Well, as Rinpoche points out, our enemies are going to die as well, so we can even help them too. So the essence of all the advice in the book, actually the point of it, the essence of it, the point of it, and this again is something that became really clear for me having to edit the book, this is my way of saying it, it isn't actually to prepare for death. The point is to prepare for the next life. Now that might take time for us as Buddhists, even as Buddhists, to get our head around. In the beginning when we first hear about reincarnation, we're kind of very vague and distant about it, kind of, yeah, okay, maybe, because this bubble of this life, this reality is so stark for us. And maybe as we become Buddhist, stay Buddhist longer, we get used to the view of reincarnation, it starts to become more real for us. Well, that's certainly what happened for me, This is a really clear point. As Rinpoche says, first of all, he said, if you want to help somebody in this life, you have to, the time they need you most is at the time of death. And the reason is simple and clear. And it's technical. And even though I said it many times yesterday, still one of the questions reflected that even though I think it's simple, we can't hear it properly. So I'll try and keep emphasising this point. And it's a technical point, because, when we a little bit describing yesterday the stages of death, which we'll maybe go into more detail again today. Let's see what happens. But taking this view of the death process, which is taken from the Vajrayana tradition, where there's these really sophisticated understandings of the subtler physical and mental energies, and this gradual deconstruction process of death, it's very clear that you could say the hours before we stop breathing, generally speaking, in the hours before we stop breathing, and it could be minutes depending on the person, that period is when the karmic seed, like I say, from our bank vault of trillions of karmic seeds that we have planted over countless lives, the one that will determine our next life, that is when it's triggered. And the point is this, and this is just within, from the Buddhist psychological perspective. When the mind is negative, when the mind is freaking out, which is the nature of ego, and it's just the nature of fear and panic and anger and depression and attachment and jealousy and drama, and especially at the time of death, attachment, which is just rampant at the time of death, naturally, then the mind is, that's the neuroses manifesting, then that's got this natural relationship with fear. So then when the mind is like that at the time of death, naturally a negative seed will be triggered, which will throw us into a lower realm rebirth. And that's programmed before we even stop breathing. That's the point. So in our case, we can deduce logically, we must have died peacefully because a virtuous seed was triggered, which is the cause of how come we went a few weeks later, found our way definitely, inexorably, logically, not randomly, to our present mummy's human fallopian tube. I only discovered that recently. It was the fallopian tube where the egg and sperm come together, right? Okay. Well, that's when you go in there. That's when it happens. I like to say, it's got zero to do with your parents, They're lying there having fun. And then you stick your nose in, You come along. So it's that, the cause of our finding our mothers and fathers, egg and sperm, the main cause was some powerful, virtuous, morality karmic seed practiced, no doubt, as Lama Zopa says, in the context of keeping very strong vows in the context of a spiritual practice. And that seed was triggered at the time of our past death, before we lost the plot, before we stopped breathing. And that's the period when people need their help most, because that's the period when the attachment is most strong. And maybe I'll go into this a bit more here today about that grasping. I mentioned it yesterday. Taking another model of Buddha's teachings, another description of how things occur and how karma occurs, the 12 links of dependent arising, the sutra teaching, and it's in the book, Maybe I'll read from it. Rinpoche's teaching is very helpful. According to that, as Lama Zopa says, some of the links play a really powerful role, particularly at the time of death. Particularly at the time of death. And the ninth one, the eighth craving and the ninth grasping, which are just two words for intense, extra strong, powerful attachment energy. Are manifest intensely at death. Much more powerful than in daily life. And naturally, that's what causes fear. That's what causes fear. And fear is the worst way to die, because that triggers a negative seed. And it's a natural thing. It's not punishment, not reward. Karma is a natural law. Buddha observed it to be so. He didn't make it up. It's not his trip. He didn't create it. He's observed it. It's like botany or gravity. It merely occurs. And Buddha has observed it. That's the Buddha's teaching, It's from his observation. So understanding these links a little bit, understanding the intensity of this grasping, and that's why at the time of death a person needs us most, to help be like a rock, like I said yesterday, to be there calm and steady and clear, giving them confidence, giving them courage, We all see, we all know ourselves. As soon as, look at our lives, the second anything goes wrong, the first thing we do, we think of who to turn to, don't we? Whom to turn to, who can help us? our beloved friend, whoever it is. We are frantic to find somebody to give our problem to share our problem with, to help us hold our problem. So look at the nightmare of so many people, you know. All these old people becoming senile, in some awful places. For people who don't care about them, children who don't care, people who abuse old people. You hear these stories, you know. Nightmarish way to die. The worst way to die. The worst way. We spend our lives not knowing how to control our minds, don't we? We haven't got a clue about our minds, most of us. So then at death, it's impossible to try and think of it, you know. So that's when we're needed most. Kind people around us, kind nurses, kind helpers, the kind sweeper, doesn't matter, anybody, to be there as a human support. So of course here the Rinpoche's book is related to Buddhists, you know. So if we are, as a Buddhist, want someone to help us at the time of death, that person has to know us well, know our practice, know what we want, know how to help us, know our mind, know what's best, you know. So I think I'll read from Rinpoche a little bit about the grasping business. It's very interesting. I think I told you yesterday when I was working on this book, and I kind of felt it wasn't finished, you know, it was a hard book to do actually, for me as an editor. So I knew some part wasn't, and then I told you I heard this thing about Amitabha's Pure Land. And then I became, you know, I'm a complete fan of Amitabha's Pure Land. You know, like I say, it's on my itinerary now, it's on my schedule. I always figure, you know, like tomorrow, I'm flying to Melbourne, so I always figure in my mind, it could be Amitabha's Pure Land first. That's okay, I'm happy with that. So I'm getting used to the idea of going to Amitabha's Pure Land. And then I figure if I miss that plane, I'll get a human one. And if I miss that one, well, I'll be in trouble. So be able to pray for me, okay? So where's Rinpoche's book? So, okay, the other part that was interesting for me, you know, you see, Rinpoche's been teaching for more than 40 years, right? And all this stuff, not all of it's transcribed, but much of it's transcribed. And the raw transcripts are like this kind of, it's like a mountain of clay. And you've got to, I'm not trying to make the editor important, but it sort of is an important role, because Rinpoche teaches, he just pours out of his mind, pours out of his heart, you know. So when you transcribe it, it's just like thousands of pages of words. And if the person's a good transcriber, they'll put commas and full stops in it, hopefully, maybe even paragraph breaks, maybe even section breaks, but many don't. So it's just these pages and pages and pages and pages. I mean, pages. Can you imagine getting a book with, it's like unedited James Joyce, practically. So it's really hard to find, you know. So Rinpoche did this teaching in France. He said that was the basis of the book. He was happy with that. But you just could feel there was more that had to be done, you know. So the piece that was missing was Amitabha's Pure Land, which is fantastic. It's only short. But the other bit was, I was reading Rinpoche's teachings, all the different times he's taught on the death process, and suddenly this particular thing grabbed me. So that made me have to then think I had to study the 12 links. I'd never studied it before. I've never had a teaching on it. Look, another 6 months just to get clear. It's only a small part of the book. But, you know, you've got to understand what you're doing when you edit somebody else's teachings. It's a very big responsibility. Otherwise, if you misinterpret, it's terrible, you know. Poor Rinpoche, channeling his thoughts through his idiot students. Very brave of him. Really, very brave of him, really. You understand? Quite intense. So this 12 links blew my mind. And this is, I think I mentioned it yesterday, but I'll say it again. This is what Rinpoche said. I have to find it. All right. There we go. Okay. So cycling, this is the sutra teaching. This is Buddha's teachings. He described the process, you know, that the different factors involved in our creating lives. Every day we're creating countless series of lifetimes. So psychedelic existence operates through the 12 links of dependent arising. From the first one, ignorance, the root delusion, the root of all the problems, the fundamental cause of all suffering, all happiness, all lives, the way we are now within samsara. Such that when that is cut by realizing emptiness, then you can't go back, you can't fall back, you can only go forward. And so until then we're just continuously cycling. So the root delusion is that on the basis of this assumption of an I, We then do actions, starting with intention, mental action, which means karma. Mental action then followed through by actions of the body and speech. Let's face it, our body and speech are the servants of the mind. The mind is the beginning of the process of intentional actions, karma. It means that. On the basis of this, and this is every millisecond, we're doing this. And they leave imprints on our consciousness. Well, I think a great term is it programs our consciousness. That we get. I think Buddha would really like, in a sense, it's almost more accurate than seeds. But they use the term seeds and imprints, Programming, it's a great one. Every millisecond, every millisecond, every millisecond. Because our mind is functioning every millisecond. And as long as our mind is functioning, it's sowing seeds. It's just natural, it's just what it does. Every millisecond. So these leave seeds. This then creates what they call name and form, which essentially is the person. Keeping it simple, So then once we're in the, we get produced in the womb and we come out, and then in relation to, and then we have contact. Then we have the sense bases. Then we have contact with things every second. One of the mental factors in the Buddhist model of the mind. It's divided into different categories of states of mind. When you study the text, low rig, I think you've done it here in the past. I think you should certainly request it again. There are 5 what they call always present mental factors. States of mind, we call them. They're always functioning, constantly. And one of these is called contact. One of these is called contact. This is when an object, like colour, there's colour, there's red, that's an object of the senses. Colour, eye consciousness, and another aspect about, never mind, kind of come together. This is contact, they say. On the basis of this, then there's a feeling. Feeling in Buddhism isn't the way we think of it as an emotion in general. There's only 3 kinds of feeling. Pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. Let's forget the neutral. Basically, every second, our attachment is a junkie that's craving pleasant feelings. And every millisecond, our attachment is craving to be free of unpleasant feelings. We either have pleasant or unpleasant. And we all know we spend our lives trying to get the nice things, which we think will give good feelings. And then we're trying to avoid the things that will avoid the unpleasant feelings. We know that. So this feeling one is massive, and that's every millisecond there's a feeling, pleasant or unpleasant. And on the basis of this, because of attachment, then this is what perpetuates samsara. So we continually want the pleasant feelings. Then the chocolate cake turns up, and because of habit in the mind from past karma, we see that round triangle, and then attachment makes this complete absurd, drama queen, exaggerated story of it, which then causes us to totally believe that when I get it, it'll trigger good feelings. So naturally we stuff it in the mouth. Not this hole, this one. We know, we're very familiar. And then it triggers good feelings. So then, of course we keep eating it, hoping for more good feelings, but then unfortunately it turns into unhappy feelings, and we get full and stuffed and get acid reflux. But then we forget that and we do it again the next day. So this is what perpetuates samsara. It's a very technical explanation. It's really fascinating how they describe it, And all this is we're programmed with this from countless, and I mean the Buddha says countless lives. We come into this life programmed, completely programmed from the first second of conception with your own tendencies, with your habits, with your karmic imprints. Your mother and father are just this catalyst to give you a life, aren't they kind? They give you a body, so you can continue to create more ridiculous karma. So then, on the basis of that feeling, craving comes. That's the point. And then we keep going, and then that leads to grasping, which is even more so. So in daily life, craving is continuously happening, and craving, which is attachment, like you're thinking, oh, what's missing? Oh God, and then you go cake, and suddenly the light bulb goes on. And then immediately the process of craving starts, doesn't it? The excitement, the anticipation, and then the next level is grasping when you stand up and go and get it. So craving and grasping are happening all day, unceasingly. Then there's another thing called becoming, which is very vague. I never understand it, but never mind. But it happens especially at death. And then so all of these are constantly over a long time leaving these seeds, which then lead to rebirth, a birth. You know, these all lead to a birth, and there's countless of these seeds every day being planted that put imprints in the mind that are in our big not petrol tank, in our bank vault of the main karmic seeds, the throwing karmas, our bank vault of throwing karmas, which then will cause a certain life, a certain life, you know. And then anyway, and then that finally leads to, then that leads to old age and then death. Well, what's interesting is birth starts the first second of conception. Old age starts the second of conception. Okay? After conception. Already it's downhill from there. You're heading towards death already. So I have to refrain myself when I see babies. And I sort of want to say to the mother, well, it's nearly dead already, so, you know, make the most of it. But I don't. I refrain. So if you've got a new baby, don't take it too insulting. Don't be too shocked. But hear that. Birth is beginning at the first second of conception, you know. That's birth in the 12 links. And then old age begins the next second. Okay? Woo.
Where's the fun?
What?
Where's the fun?
There isn't any. There's not meant to be any. If you're a bodhisattva, you can have your cake and eat it too. That's what I figure. Go to the Amitabha's Pure Land, get a few realizations, then I can come back and have fun, you see, as well as help people. I don't want to be too boring. I want to have fun as well. So you can have your cake and eat it too. I'm convinced. But you've got to be a bodhisattva, at least, if not a Buddha. Okay, so now, let's discuss the 12 links in relation to this human body that we have now. What caused our consciousness to join the egg and sperm in our mother's womb? What made it go there? This is when I read the teachings. This is what blew my mind. That's why I had to study it for 6 months so I could do this little chapter, you know. So let us, in past lives, because of ignorance, the root delusion, maripa, ignorance, ego grasping, ignorance, we created both non-virtuous and virtuous karma. Okay, because of this ego grasping, even the good actions we do now are still informed by this ignorance. They're virtuous, but there's still mistake there, and they're going to perpetuate samsara. It's only when we've realised emptiness and perfected that we cut that, you know. So we continue to. So our non-virtue is a disaster. That's motivated by the delusion. That's impelled by ego grasping. But so is our virtue, you know. Because as long as I believe, and if I'm having anger towards you, then that's heavy duty, that's double trouble. It's a negative action as well as one that keeps perpetuating samsara. But the same with virtue. If I'm compassionate towards you, it's still, compassion is virtue and it'll leave a positive seed and bring a good result, but still it's based upon the assumption of a self-existent me having self-existent compassion for a self-existent you. So it's still in samsara. So we have to understand that. So now, in past lives, because of ignorance, we created both non-virtuous and virtuous karma, number 2, which planted seeds, left potential in our consciousness, number 3. So now, at the time of, this is the point now, what I read, at the time of death of our life before this one, whether you're a human or an elephant or a kangaroo, okay, craving arose. This 8th link, which is happening every second of the day, but in particular at death, is especially powerful. This craving came at the time of death. And which is to not separate, to not separate, this is the point, to craving particularly to not separate from this body. When it's in daily life, it's craving to get the cake, the this, the that, the good feeling, whatever, always perking and moving ahead. But here, at death, it's craving to hold on to this body. You know, that's the intense craving, which is why there's so much fear at death. That's what Rinpoche says. Then fear arose because the attachment to not wanting to leave the body, that's what causes fear at the time of death. It's very simple.
Is it the body or is it the
body? The body. I'm just reading Rinpoche's teachings.
Yeah.
Darling, he's not saying you're not attached to your eye. Of course you are. But he's talking about the body. He's saying it.
Yeah.
He means body. He meant eye, he would have said it. And I would have, well, I hope I haven't misunderstood. He says body. That's a very interesting point, isn't it? Good question. Yeah. Then fear arose because of the attachment. Okay, not wanting to leave the body, and that's what causes fear. But after that, the 9th link, grasping, which is even more powerful attachment, even more powerful. A stronger form of attachment. This time in our case, now this is what Rinpoche says, this is what I blew my mind, so I had to study it. a stronger form of attachment. So he says this time is from us in our past life. In our case, attachment for a future human body. So now in the case of someone who is going to be reborn in the hot hells, I don't like to think about the hot hells, but never mind, the craving is the same, not wanting to separate from their body. But the grasping is to heat because they feel very cold. Many times dying people say they feel cold and beg for blankets, but even if you give them 2 or 3, it won't be enough. Their grasping to heat is so strong. So the grasping of heat activates the grasping, in this case at heat, in the case of someone else, activates a negative karmic seed from the bank vault, which is the second link. The seeds we plant that will produce future lifetimes. There are many seeds planted. Remember, there are 4 ways that our actions ripen in the future. The main way is a type of rebirth. Then the residual result of those is the tendency to keep doing that action, having the action happen to you, and an environmental result. So killing, in the case of killing, like I always think, there's this example of this boy who was a fisherman. I always tell this story. She'd heard Rinpoche's teachings more than 20 years ago, 25 years ago at Kopan. And she was in tears and said her boy, who had been a fisherman all his life, he has died 5 years before he was 29. And she'd always thought that he died doing what he loved, like we like to think, you know. But he died drowned. He drowned. He died drowning. And he was a fisherman, she said, all his life, since a little boy. From the first second he met fishing, he fell in love with fishing. So this is the point now. We can deduce from that, he woke up in this life with a tendency to kill. A tendency. He didn't get it from his mother and father. Not from his mother. She didn't like killing. It was a tendency in his mind already. And that's the residual result of having killed in the past and having been in the lower realms in the past. So that main karma had run itself out, like a petrol tank ran out of petrol. But he hadn't purified it. He hadn't made a decision, I will never kill again. And that's why, as Lama Zopa says, living in vows, I will never kill again, and purifying the 4 opponent powers are the fundamental practices, and especially purification. He says we're insane not to do it every day. Because when we understand this presence of karma, and it really is an extremely sophisticated technical explanation of universes and how beings come into being and what is this and the cause of that, it's phenomenal. I mean, you know, and I said Buddha didn't make it up. He's not a creator. He's observed it, you know, with his mind in subtle meditation, obviously. It's a highly sophisticated explanation of the technical explanation of what is happiness, what is suffering, what causes this, what causes that, you know. So the main result of killing, so he killed, the karma ran out from being in the lower realms, because every second you have a suffering, you exhaust the karma. Eventually it ran out, and like a miracle, one life, you know, he was dying as an animal. We've all been animals in the past, so clearly you can change from animal to human, because here we are, we're proof. He was an animal in a lower realm, and that at some point in the time of his death, certain karma was triggered, that certain conditions activated one of his human, virtuous karmic seeds from his human throwing karma bank vault. So he got a decent human body again. He was born in California, this nice mummy. So if you look at the 4 ways that karma ripens, he had a lot of good karma. He had a really good human birth. He had very good tendencies, his mother said. He was kind, intelligent, loving, generous, all these things. But among those tendencies, like look at the human realm, most humans have a tendency to kill. Most religions even teach that it's cool to kill. I'm not criticizing, it's a fact. So there's a tendency to kill, very strong inside us. Look at us, you know. He had one of those. And in his case, it didn't manifest until he met fishing. So what's happening is this, the tendency to kill is there, like a karmic imprint. And it's like when you meet the object, it's like you know, when you meet a person you feel familiar. I always think of Romeo and Juliet. When they met each other, they fell in love, you know. Or in West Side Story especially. When Tony's singing, you know, Tony sings, I got it on my iPad, I saw it recently. Tony's singing Something's Coming, remember that song? You know when something's very powerful coming and you feel it coming? That's how karma is. Something's coming, you see. Because the karma between these two people was so intense, you and Tony, and he knew it was coming. And then they met, and like instantaneous recognition. That the dance, remember? And all the jets and the sharks all dancing.
Yeah.
Then Maria and Tony see each other, and everything else disappears. Karma ripens. Well, that's how it was for this guy with fishing. He didn't think of fishing the moment before. He goes fishing, he can't believe it, because the karmic seed is there, it's triggered, instantaneously attachment is triggered, attachment makes it look divine, it triggers a delicious feeling, and so logically he deduces that fishing must cause the good feeling, and of course he wants to keep fishing. So he fished until he was 29, and then he died scuba diving. This is the tragedy of feeling, and this is why living in vows is necessary. The only way we can get ahead of the game, Ramazan was implying, he used to say those words, is to live in vows. He says just being good is not enough. And when he says the karma we must have created in a past life, the virtuous karma, the morality karma, the non-killing, non-stealing, non-lying, non-harming karma, is not just from being nice people. It has to have been practiced, he said, not only in the context of a spiritual path, but in the context of keeping very powerful vows of morality. So the point is this. Karma is intention. If there's no intention, there's no karma. How can there be? There can be a mouse in your kitchen and you're sitting there cooking the dinner for your family and you don't see the mouse and your foot goes on it and it dies. Well, there's not how can there be karma? Because your mind didn't decide, I will kill a mouse. There's no recognition, there's no intention, there's no motivation. There's nothing. Your mind doesn't see it. Feet don't create karma. What an absurd idea. Karma is done by the mind. Everything starts with the mind. Intention. Everything exists on the tip of the wish, Rinpoche says. Minds create karma. The word intention means karma. No mental, no decision, no intention, no motivation, no karma. How can there be? Maybe you were drunk and you were abusing your husband at the same time. That's different. You're creating the negative karma of being drunk and abusing your husband, not of killing a mouse. So, right this moment, we're not killing, right? Probably not, unless there's a mouse underneath and we can't feel it under our bottom. We're not killing. So isn't that nice? Aren't we lucky we're not killing? But we're not creating any virtue of non-killing. And we need in our bank vaults bucket loads of strong, delicious, delicious seeds of non-killing. The basic level of morality karma. It's a proactive thing. Merely being a nice person and not killing is because of our past virtue. So we've created such virtuous karma in the past that we're born into a place like Adelaide. I mean, I haven't met even an ant since I've been in Adelaide. Are you hearing me? I haven't met an ant or a mosquito or a mouse or a cockroach. Well, you're in India, it's like Jurassic Park. They bombard you, in Bodh Gaya at dusk in the summer. It's a carpet of sentient beings. You can't exist without destroying countless sentient beings. I haven't met one little bug yet. That's due to our incredible virtue that we have harmed we've got such non-killing, non-harming karma. It's manifesting as having such a nice environment that you're not demanding, you're not forced to kill all the time. That's due to our virtue. But we're resting on our laurels. It's from our past virtue. And we're just simply, it's like we've got a garden full of delicious veggies and we're eating up all our veggies thinking, aren't we lucky? You've got to sow some more. So how do you sow more? By intentionally not killing. But if you're never meeting a sentient being you don't want to not kill, how can you create the karma of not killing? We're not. Are you communicating with me?
Yes.
We're not creating any virtuous karma of not killing because we're intending not to kill. So the only time we intend not to kill is when we meet a sentient being. Or, easy peasy, live in vows. It's the point of vows. Not some holy thing. Vows are just practical. So, as Rinpoche says, you can do lots of, you can be doing lots of practice, but not live in a vow of not killing. Merely not have a not. You can be, whereas another person merely has a vow not to kill, but doesn't do much else. That second person is constantly purifying their mind and constantly sowing positive seeds, popping them into their bank vaults. And 24 hours a day, while they're sleeping, eating, having sex with a new girlfriend, drinking beer at the pub, having a vow not to kill. It's the easiest way to live. You can stick your feet out and eat popcorn all day, at the television. You're creating far more virtue than a person, it's like walking downhill. The other person's keeping their head above water, Vows are so powerful. And Buddha says that vows are so potent that they're a subtle energy that's visible to clairvoyance. Because you think about a vow. That fisherman, it's like he lived in a vow to kill. He defined himself as a fisherman. Every decision in his life was based on when to go fishing, when not to go fishing. Everything was in reference to fishing. I'm not criticising, just showing how karma works. Whereas another person might go fishing every now and again. Clearly not as heavy. So equally with virtue, you might be virtuous every now and again, but if you're living in a vow not to kill, 24 hours a day, you're defining yourself as a non-killing person. You're defining yourself as a non-harming person. It's like absolutely incredible. And according to all the Buddhist teachings, the power of vow is such it's a psychological skill. It's a psychological technique. Don't think of it as religion. It's impossible to create enough virtuous karma without vows. Because, only when you've got emptiness and bodhicitta is your virtue very strong. Right now, the virtue we create is really weak. Because we don't have much virtue. I mean, it's not being mean about us. I always say that when I'm being mean, but it always sounds so heavy, When I read the Tibetans, they sound like the most fundamentalist. But it's hard to hear all this because we hear it like religion, But it's so technical. It's like discussing nutrition, mental nutrition, So living in vows is an easy way to put lots of seeds in your good bank vault. And then purifying at the end of the day, and the fourth step of which is I will never kill. So you're strengthening it, growing it all the time. We can't get ahead of the game without these two tools. This is junior school Buddhism, So, the main way karma ripens is the fully ripened result, which is a type of rebirth. Then that fisherman, because he hadn't purified all the aspects of killing, he had the residual result left over, which is the worst one, which is the tendency to kill. Look at all the humans. Every human got a human birth because of non-killing. One track of karma is the type of birth you get. The next track of karma is your tendencies. And look at humans. Most humans kill something. So most humans, this is too shocking to hear. I'm just quoting the teachings. When they die, will go to the lower realms. This should be enough to make us weep with compassion. That's the point, First for ourselves. So feeling, I was going about feeling, wasn't I? That's the point of this, feeling. And then because of attachment, we're junkies for the good feelings. And the only way in our life, we can see this is samsara, the only way most of the time we know how to trigger a pleasant feeling. Think about it. All we want is pleasant feelings. All we want is pleasant feelings. This is just natural. It's called happiness. Pleasant feeling is another word for happiness. So we are driven every second, having this body, having attachment, to constantly search out methods for getting good feelings. And think about it. The only method mostly that we know for triggering good feelings is getting objects of the senses. And it's natural in this body that we have, Yeah, we get good feelings when we're kind to people. Aren't we lucky? Aren't we fortunate? But mostly because this body is so massive a role in our lives, we make the body the boss. As Lama Yeshe puts it, It plays a massive role, even to the point in our culture where we are only our body. They don't even posit a mind. There's only the body. So no wonder it's so hard to even hear these things, So the body's needs drives us every millisecond. So of course there's attachment to I, but the major one is this body. The one we define as ourselves, the one we identify with totally, utterly every second. So we're craving good feelings all the time, pleasant feelings. So the only way we can get it is by getting the cake, getting the nice words, getting the nice sounds, getting the nice people, getting the nice temperature, getting the nice food, getting the whatever it is. The only way we know how to have a good feeling is by getting an object of the senses, which is an object of attachment. So feeling and attachment are completely different. Feeling is pleasant or unpleasant. Attachment is a state of mind attachment is a state of mind that interprets something as being an object that'll give me a good feeling. This is what samsara is, and so it's difficult. It's like a minefield to manage it all. So, no, I've lost my page. Here we go. No, I'm sorry, I've lost my page again. Completely lost. Okay, are we communicating here?
Oh, yes.
Any question? Oh, all the yes again. Oh, yes. Any questions so far? Any questions?
Is it possible to...
Hang on a sec. Is anybody not here yesterday? Oh. Are you people Buddhists? Well, this is brand new stuff to you. You came for the death, didn't you? Okay. Are some of you not Buddhists? I'm not being rude. I just need to know what to say. Are some of you not Buddhists and never come before? Okay. This must be a bit overwhelming now, all these weird ideas. Anybody else? So any questions? Okay. Yes, question.
I think it might be a good idea to transfer the craving to things into a
Is
rather...
that a question, darling? What's the question?
It might...
What's the question?
Okay.
Best to have a question.
Sure. Do you think it makes sense to transfer the craving to things rather to craving to help people to fulfill your social responsibility?
Yeah, of course. It'd be a wonderful idea. What's a good idea? Buddha would agree with you.
Death.
Buddha would agree with you. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Buddha agrees with me. Okay. So, okay. Any more questions? Can I ask you if you have a question? Because you didn't come yesterday. And did you have a particular... I'm so... Oh no, that's fine. That's perfect. But were you here yesterday?
Yes.
Oh, okay. So you heard yesterday. Oh, thank you. Oh, good. Now I'm happy. I'm very pleased. Okay, fantastic. Okay. Are there any more questions? No more questions for now. Okay. Okay, so, Okay, this 12 links business. All right, back to the 12 links. Okay, so the point that Rinpoche is making is essentially this, and this is sort of technical stuff, and maybe it just, I don't know, if it's helpful or not. We'll soon find out. I'm sorry if it's not helpful. So this grasping, this is the point that Rinpoche is making. Your question is a good question. So basically, when we're good little Buddhists, we hear about how attachment is, got to give up attachment, you shouldn't be attached, blah, 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 I'm so attached, blah, 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 attachment is the cause of suffering, blah, 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 And then suddenly, what Rinpoche is saying is that at the time of death, we had strong attachment for a future human body. Well, he's saying, basically, given that we have so much attachment, and because there's attachment to this life and this body and my friends and my pension plan and my mummy and my daddy and my this and my pussy and my doggy, this is all our attachment, like a vampire holding on to what we've got, right? But this is the one time we really can't hold on to it because very logical, really simple. It's so clear we can't take it with us. It's so blatantly, insanely clear. Finally, this is when we have to say goodbye to it. Finally. Isn't it? It's clear to us, So I don't care whether you think you go to heaven or hell or a black hole or disappear into dust or another life. In the sense here, what I'm saying is we can see no matter what happens after death, you can't bring it with you. Isn't it? So if you're a materialist, I think the best we can think of is mostly the fear of death is like a black hole you're going to fall into. Isn't it? Because that means nobody knows. That's the way we talk in the West. So I think with that view alone, no wonder there's so much fear. Because who in the name of God in heaven wants to go into a black hole? Do you understand? So no wonder there's fear. Now the fact is, if you're a Christian and you love God, then the way to help your Catholic mummy is you just flood her with the love of God every second. Tell her how God loves her. Tell her how, it's all the things that Rinpoche talks about. There's a whole section of the practice is what to talk about. Talk about heaven. Describe it to her. Read beautiful saint stories, whatever, so her mind will be uplifted. And she will look forward to heaven. Look at one of the key characteristics of attachment. The key characteristics of attachment is to look forward to something. That's exactly the function of attachment. Are you hearing me? Every day we do this. From the second we wake up, we're always looking forward to the next thing, the next one, now the breakfast, now the this, now the drive, now the work, now home, now lunch, now dinner. You understand? Never ending. Never ending. Even our virtue, we're attached to it, like she says. Better than nothing, I tell you. Because the Buddha's view is we're going to be a while before we've got rid of attachment. So do not hold your breath. It's profoundly subtle. It's primordially deep. So this, what Rinpoche is saying here is, let's be skillful and use our attachment. Just your point. I remember first giving this manuscript to a friend. She said, oh, Rinpoche can't be saying that. And that's what I did. I was surprised when I read it first, that we, in our past life, we had grasping, intense attachment for a human body. And that grasping, this is the point, that grasping, that ninth link, that is when all the energy is kicking in, and now that is the trigger for the number 2 link, which is the karma that will produce your next life. That grasping is the trigger. It's like all the conditions come together and then boom, karma ripens. That is the trigger. That grasping is the trigger for the second link, which is the karmic seed in your bank vault. And in our case, the seed was triggered, that is the one that caused us several weeks later to run to our mummy's human womb, you know. So the grasping is a total delusion, and its function is to trigger the karmic seed. But it can be, the grasping can be for something positive and a skillful means. So your mummy's a Catholic, your mummy's Jewish, your mummy's a Hindu, your mummy's a whatever, she's a communist, I've no idea. Maybe talk about Lenin or something, I don't know. If you're a communist or a materialist, you talk about their qualities, make them happy, lift their minds, lift their anxiety, make them feel loving and compassionate. What a good life I've done, rejoicing in their good qualities, how happy everybody is, how we all love you, we're so happy with you, to help them relax and stop the grasping. But then you can't look forward to anything, because they don't have a view. But if you're a Christian, look forward to heaven. Look forward to God. The skillful means. Because then the grasping goes to that, and you can let this stuff go. And that grasping, because the mind is lifted, can trigger a virtuous karmic seed. It's practical, it's skillful, it's technical. Are you hearing me?
Yes.
So in our case, yeah.
Robina, so if you're coming to the time of your death,
Yeah.
And you have a strong grasping for mice, or strong grasping to be a cockroach. Does it work that way as
Yeah,
well?
of course it does, absolutely. So look at most of our lives when we think of animals or creatures, you have aversion for them, or you're really attached to your pets. Being really attached to your pet, straight to become a pussycat, of course. That's the point. That's the point.
So you can actually be deluded enough to be attracted to, copulating cockroaches.
Oh God, look at all the people called furries. You know about furries? Have you heard of furries, Gabe? Well, you don't read the newspaper.
I've never heard of a furry.
I don't know what world you live in, you people. I read all the newspapers. Furries, I remember in Vanity Fair 25 years ago I first read about furries, that these human beings, they say themselves as mostly vaguely gay, excuse me, this is their views, this man, their attachment is having sexual contact with stuffed toys.
Oh my God.
Not just animals. He said this fellow, he tried animal, human size appropriate animals like German shepherds, but he prefers his stuffed toys. So he spends all his money on eBay. And they all have their conferences, and they wear their mouse and their this and their that animals. And I mean, they're not cockroaches, I'm not sure, but cute animals. They say it's cartoon-like. And they all meet in their conferences, and they have their own language and their own way of world, and they talk, and they completely identify with animals. He said they prefer they're furries. They call themselves furries. And there's a whole variations of them now. So when you think of karma, if karma is the way the world exists, and we create everything from our thoughts. Now, you'll all laugh, of course, but I tried to think, well, what is the cause? There he is, a human being, when he was 6 years old. He's at the sports. He's an American. At the sports. Then all the other boys, no doubt, got turned on by the girls, I always forget their names. Who kick their legs. Cheerleaders. But he got turned on by the Mickey Mouse mascot. Now, my friend Panos, who's Greek, he told me when he was 6, he's walking down the street of Athens with his Greek Orthodox mummy, and he sees a poster of a half-naked lady at a cinema, and he says, this squeaky little voice, I can't get up there anymore, "Mummy, why is my penis standing up?" He got turned on by a girl shape. Well, guess why? Because he's got attachment to girl, female, human shapes. Well, if you're think of our culture in this last 100 years, especially America, and we've all got a part of it. Cartoons, personified animals. The Buddha's point is this: everything, any sentient being ever sees or hears, here's the point, gets imprinted in the mind. We're programming our mind. As one Lama said, it's like all our lives we're taking photos and everything is stored. What do you think the cause of this life is? And of meeting that person, having this one do it, raping me here, loving me there, giving me money here, liking this, not liking that, wanting to fish, wanting to have sex with a stuffed toy. Programmed from having in the past, and much of it from our animal lives, you know. So then guess who's turning into a fairy this life? He's got a nice Christian, he's a nice white Christian boy. They're mostly techies, so they're vaguely techie. So he said, they go to their conferences in their hotels and things, the fairies all meet. So he was a nice Christian boy, a nice white Christian American boy, okay? So he's got virtue, morality. But all his life, in his past life, think of America, think of who we are, and think of our culture. You spend all your childhood, and our minds when we're very small children are just driven by astonishing creativity. That's attachment energy. Excited, attachment, thinking, fantasies, stories, you know? So what are you spending your life in? Reading comics, having your pets and having your stuffed toys. You're totally obsessed with personified animals. It leaves imprints in the mind. So then you see what sexual attachment is? It's just very strong attachment. There's no difference between attachment to sex, attachment to killing, or attachment to food. It's just strong, that's all. And the one of bodies is very strong. So and then any strong attachment to anything becomes extra strong next life. So that's what we label sexual. So then they wake up in this life, and his little thing stood up when he saw Mickey Mouse. So he spends his life, of course, believing in this, you know, his right to be what he is, and so he spends his life, you know, he pointed out the stuffed toy he likes to have sex with. So yes, is the answer. We create our own realities. So we better watch what goes on in our minds, Buddha says. Not being fundamentalist, just being practical. That's all. No one's going to punish you. We do it to ourselves. We're the creators of our own reality. That's the joke, you know. But in our culture we go, oh, we're allowed to think what we like. Or we go, oh, it's only in the mind. Like I mentioned, you know, this, anyway, somebody else had a question?
Sorry,
I've heard a voice. Yes.
It's like people who say they want to come back as their cat because they think that they have a good
Oh, we all
life.
say, everybody says that. People, humans will guarantee you will, you know. Don't worry about it. Karma takes care. That's right, exactly. Every word counts. Every thought counts, Buddha says. Everything gets stored in the mind. It's how come we can be clairvoyant. I remember reading recently, I told you this on YouTube, this one young American woman was always depressed since her mummy left her when she was young. She took care of the children. Then she got married. She had children. She seemed a very nice girl, always depressed, and she killed herself. Or she tried. And she reported this vividest of vivid, crystal clear vision, as she called it, of every major event in her life, starting from the second she was born. Well, that's imprinted in her mind. You see, we're thick as post. We don't remember 90% of even today. Forget about even a past life. But all the memories are there. And when we get single point of concentration or access our subtle mind, and she did when she tried to kill herself, when you dream, that's your subtle mind, then it's all attainable for us. It's all there for us. So nothing goes astray. Every imprint, every desire, every craving, every wish, every fantasy, everything stays in the mind and then grows and manifests, you know. Buddha says literally, this is the meaning of karma, as His Holiness calls it, self-creation. It's interesting. It's an interesting view. So attachment. So the fisherman, he mightn't have had his orgasms. His little thing didn't probably stand up when he went fishing, but he certainly got excited. But torturers, that's how they talk. We just think this is monstrous. We don't want to think about it. But I mean, one American serial killer, he reported about how since he was tiny, he was compelled to torture the creatures because he got pleasure. There's one fellow called BTK. He's in Kansas, I think. They don't have death row there, so he's still in prison. He killed like 35 people. Over 30 years. He called himself bind, torture, kill. He lived in this fantasy world. And he would catch people, he'd get people, kidnap them, mummies and daddies or partners or couples or families, and he would bind them and then torture them. And he said, and he got orgasms from it. His thing stood up when that happened. Because that's habit. You see, everything's habit. And when you've got the strong habit to do, it triggers good feelings. Aren't we lucky having the pathetic old habit to stuff a bit of cake in the mouth? Aren't we fortunate? So don't get too depressed, please. Do you understand? Can you imagine the torture of being a pedophile? Okay, keep them out of the way. But can you imagine the torture of wanting to torture all the time and unable to think of anything else? A friend of mine on death row in Kentucky, he said, Mitch, the Buddhist, he said, this friend, the guy I know, he says, Robina, he thinks about torture all day. This is what attachment energy does from having in the past, habit. We should be in tears of compassion. Yes, protect them. I'm glad he's on death row. He can't do it to other people. This is our poor demented minds, you know. We no idea why we think things. People go mad every day. No idea what's in their mind. Why? You know, they knew their mummy didn't teach them. You brought them all with you. Habits. For me, at least it's an explanation. You can't blame God for it. It's an interesting view. I find karma so powerful, you know, I swear to you. At least it's an explanation. So then, watch our minds like a hawk. Yeah.
Robina, have you ever heard of... can you hear me?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Have you ever heard of self-fulfilling prophecy?
Yes, darling.
That's the same, isn't
Well,
it?
it's not quite the same, sweetheart.
Similar.
It's sort of vaguely similar. No, but it's not. I think that can be... No, I disagree. That means be careful what you think because it'll happen. We think like next day. We're talking like next life. There's a much more subtle meaning. I know, you're right, you're true. You're not wrong. It's true. It's not wrong. But it's not really the same because it means usually like, well, you think of it today and it'll happen tomorrow. That's what people tend to think, isn't it? They're not talking about past lives, are they? No.
Not
That's right,
particularly.
exactly. So we're talking past lives. I'm specifically meaning past lives. That's my point. That's the point here. Not just this life. Because, you know, if Buddha would say, if you spend your life killing, next life you'll suffer from it. You don't suffer this life, do you? If you kill every day. You don't even get killed. You might live till you're 97. If you steal every day, one of the karmic results is to be stolen from. But not this life. It might not happen. And so, you know, liking your toys when you're a little girl, you don't get, you know, you're not getting turned on by it. It's only next life that the attachment grows mightily, and then you're attracted to having sex with your Mickey Mouse toy. You know. That's what so yes, you're not wrong. It's true. But this is a more long-term one, and mainly about next lives, because the energy grows massively more strong next life. And the same with, luckily, with virtue and compassion. But yes, it's a good point, isn't it? I've heard about it. For sure I've heard about it. And where that originated, I don't know. Is it a Catholic Christian teaching or is it just some... Do you know where it came from, the history of it?
I think it was part of the personal growth movement.
Oh, I see. Okay, very good. No, I understand. That makes sense, yeah. Yeah. Was that more? Yes.
Oh, it's just about attachment to our pets. And
Is there a question?
well, it's like how... I mean, I have kittens,
Yes.
and I've always had cats for many years.
That's right.
So how not to become attached to
Well, that's
them
what practice
in
is.
such that
That's what
I'm
practice
their
is.
carer.
That's what practice is. And that's where if you think of what's... Okay, if you're a carer, it's a good point now. Okay, if you're a carer for a baby or an old person, your job is to know what they need, isn't it? Would you agree? Would you agree with that? That's a carer, isn't it? Well, if you saw yourself really as a carer of a pet, and you were, let's say, a Buddhist, then you would only be trying to do what you can to help their mind for future life. But I bet 90% of us Buddhists in this room never think of it because we're so attached to our cute little kitten. Lama Zopa says if you could see the mind of your cute little cat and kitten just for a moment, had a direct experience of their mind, the suffering of their mind would be so unbearable, you'd never want to sleep again and waste a single second of this human life. Do you see them like that? I don't think so. That's because we have...
way. All I can do is to, like this morning, I've put on some Buddhist mantras.
Okay, good.
As I would be
Then that's the
naughty on
point.
the bed.
This is it. That's your job. So that's the point. Nothing else you can do. You can feed them, but you know, every time you feed them, they're just using up their merit. So at least give them the Dharma because that can help their mind. Then you understand. That's your job. Meanwhile, you're using your attachment to be useful to them. Otherwise, it's just fulfilling our own needs, isn't it? That's exactly the right. To think of what's best for them. That's exactly the point. And that's, of course, the Buddha's view, understanding this business of the mind, this is the point, that to leave imprints in their mind, you know.
And
Exactly.
to do something in such a way they're not going to become attached to me because I may not...
No, just as well they are
outlive them.
attached to you, because then at least if they die, that can help, that can be the grasping that can trigger them to get a human birth.
Well, these are
That's what
younger,
I'm
so
suggesting.
I
Pardon?
may not be there at this
Look at
first
whatever,
step.
then you can't help that, never mind. They've got a karmic connection with you, put it that
Yeah.
way, and they'll meet you again and you'll lead them to enlightenment. You'll have them by the scruff of their neck. That's right, exactly. There you go. So, this grasping is what I'm getting at, okay? The intensity of this grasping, how to use it skillfully, your point in general in daily life, at least be attached to something that can help you. So the time of death, it's a practical issue. I think when we hear the Buddhist one, got to give up attachment, it sounds kind of heavy, you know. But when we understand at the time of death, it's practical. Otherwise you're going to be dragged screaming, you know, out of that door. But if you've given it up, you're able to go bye-bye. And some people are. Some people die really nicely. And they're able to let go. They have compassion. They have love. They're happy to move on. If they have faith in God or something. That's the way to die. And then that's because there's no attachment. Therefore there's no fear. But that grasping is still going to happen until you hardly realise, no matter what. But that can hook onto the human life or go to the pure realm, the Buddha realms or whatever, you know. Skillful means. It's skillful means. Do you understand the point? Well, that's why, if you are a Buddhist, and you do take the business of karma, you know, as your working hypothesis, which is like I like to say it, and it's that you who are the creator of your future, then just like I said, if you want to go on a holiday, you've got to first say, may I go on a holiday? Well, that's called aspiration. I want. That's the first step. May I walk out the door is the first step in walking out the door. My legs are not the first step. My mind is wanting to walk out the door. That's the first one. So I want to go to France. Then you don't just sit there and cross your fingers. You know, you put into your calendar January the 7th going to France, and you get to January the 7th, oh, what happened? How come I'm not in France? Well, you never bothered to create the causes. You didn't buy the ticket. You didn't save your money. You didn't get time off from work. It won't happen. You've got to first have the wish, then you create the causes. So it's really practical. You want a human life, then you've got to know what the causes are. Well, live in vows of non-killing, non-lying, non-stealing, and purify your karma, and do a few little extra pieces, and you can sit back and relax, because that'll be the cause of a human body. Very simple. Very simple. Want it, create the causes, and it'll come. Karma's natural. It's a natural law. You know, when you become a gardener, you have to, that's why the analogy of seeds and fruits for me is such a powerful one. You first got to want a garden. So you don't just go, oh, I'll have a garden, and you go to the shop and buy any old seed and chuck them in the ground randomly. No, every single seed you plant, and this is the point about karma now, every seed you plant is based upon what you want in the future, isn't it? Do you see my point now? This is a powerful example. This is the analogy of karma. Right now, the things we do is because we want the result now. I want a good feeling now, shove in the cake, you know. But if I want a human body, if I want to go to Amitabha's Pure Land, I should decide. And then I've got to see what are the causes. It's like if I want a carrot, I want a carrot's in my garden, I have to know, you have to know the result. You want a carrot. So then you've got to go buy carrot seed, isn't it? It's obvious. It's a pretty no-brainer. You've got to know what you want first, and then you plant the seeds. You've got to know what kind of rebirth you want, and then you plant the seeds. It's not complicated. What we tend to do as Buddhists, we kind of like, you know, my feeling is sometimes I used to think, you know, well, I'm a good girl really, and Lama Zopa will see I'm a good girl. He'll sort of take care of me. No, it's not his business. It's my job. I want a human birth, so that means don't kill, don't lie, don't steal, live in the morality of vows, and purify my vows. But purify my negative karma every day, the 4 opponent powers. And then do a bit of extra, connect to the Buddha, do some aspirations and do some good practices and add a bit of virtue to the mix. But the basic is junior school. The basic is live in vows and purify. That's the cause of getting a decent human body. And then you want to link to the Buddhas, then do Buddhist things, and you'll have imprints of the Buddha, and then you'll meet the Buddhas again. You get born to a Buddhist mummy instead of a communist mummy or something. You know, got the wrong rebirth in the wrong country. You want the right rebirth in the right country. It's up to you. It's up to you. So why do you think we're all sitting here in Adelaide in Buddha House in whatever year it is, 20,000 something? Isn't it? What do you think the cause is? Because past lives, probably bloody Tibetans, obviously, because we're Tibetan Buddhists, clearly made strong aspirations to get a decent human birth when we can meet the Dharma. Well, guess what? We are just wish-fulfilling, whatever the word is. Exactly that. We are experiencing the fruits of exactly what we did in the past. We're experiencing the carrots. We get the carrots now. We did it, but we forgot we did it. We think someone else gave it to us. Or we think it's random. No, we created it. So then keep sowing more seeds, please, for more carrots. And there's only 2 options, human or Amitabha's Pure Land, according to this view here, you know. So it's not complicated. It's like I go to those shops, you know, the health shops, and the homeopaths are great. The homeopaths have a little book of A to Z diseases and then A to Z medicines. It's really helpful. You look up the disease and there's the Zrup or Arnica. Okay, there's A, Arnica. Thank you. It's like that. I want a human body. Okay, what are the causes? Boom, 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 boom. Just do it. You know, we're very good organising things. It's not complicated. Then karma takes care. Lama Yeshe says, you know. Anyway, are we communicating here?
Yes.
All right. That'll do for that one. So, okay. So let's go to this. I'll go to some of the chapters now where we say the okay. Okay. So the first section of the book is sort of, how to think about death and reincarnation, the background about what happens after death, and how, don't be afraid, and attachment, give up attachment, live a good life, all this business. And then the next slide is the technical thing of what happens at death and the 8 stages of death, and there's 12 links and all that stuff's there. And then the practices to do during the months and weeks before death. There's a whole bunch. So what, Rinpoche talks about, I'll just go through some of these then now. There's all this first section. Create a good use of environment. Then all the practices, what to see and touch, what to think about, what to hear, what to meditate on, how to purify negative karma, what to do, and then finally what to do during the hours before death. That's when all this stuff happens, That's the critical time. And the next section is what to do during the hours and days after the breath has stopped. This is crucial for Buddhism. Up to the 3 days. And then what to do after the mind has left the body, which is, then what to do the next 49 days. So there's a whole, more than half the practices are what to do once the person's, stopped breathing. So many things we can do. So let's just look at a few Rinpoche's thoughts and things. So Rinpoche says, as we've discussed, a good rebirth, a human rebirth, or a Buddha in a pure land, it, depends on dying peacefully with virtuous thoughts. These two come together. When the mind's deluded, the mind's neurotic, the mind's completely full of negativity, anger and attachment and fear and drama, which triggers negative seeds. It's just natural. It's not punishment, it's natural. When the mind's peaceful, it's virtuous. And it can trigger virtuous seeds. Okay. So therefore, because it's so critical that time, as Rinpoche says, the people surrounding the person who's dying, friends, family, professional carers, have a big responsibility. I will put it this way. Whatever arises in your loved one's mind, whether their thoughts are virtuous or non-virtuous, very much depends upon you and other helpers, how you behave towards them. It is a great responsibility, If you're not careful, if you don't have this education, that the way you behave affects the mind of the person and therefore their future life, you will only harm them, not help them. And that's the point. It's a shift. If you've got the Buddhist approach, it's a shift from helping them now, which is nurses' jobs. If you're just a nurse and not a Buddhist, isn't it, Gabe? Your job is to help their body and help them be peaceful now, isn't it? But here, the context is bigger. And you've got to train yourself to think that, Like I said, what really struck me editing this book, it isn't that we're preparing for death. It's just this inconvenient drag of a thing that has to happen. We're actually preparing for the next life. If you've got the Buddhist view, it's like if you're a devoted Catholic, you're preparing to go to heaven. It's the same it's the same meaning, So helpers should be close to the dying person. So, Rinpoche says that people who help, who give advice and support, and especially one of the practices, when you first stop breathing, this always sounds very funny, one of the first practices to do, the Buddhist ones, as soon as you stop breathing, they say you shout the name of their guru in their ear, or if it's God they love, you shout Jesus, shout, because their ears are gone already, so you've got to shout loud. That sounds very funny. It's one of the main practices. Who says the name of the person's guru in their ear when their breath stops. They shouldn't be someone they dislike. In fact, there should be a pure relationship between the people. It's kind of obvious, I can only imagine how distressing it must be in hospitals when people can't stand the nurses. It must be very distressing, wouldn't it be? Do you notice that? Or generally speaking, the nurses are kind in your
Generally
unit?
speaking, they're very good.
But it would be distressing, wouldn't it?
I imagine so.
Some people maybe aren't the kindest sometimes, either they get angry or they get upset, or they... Naturally, we're humans, aren't we?
Yeah, we don't always get on with everybody, do we?
No, we don't, that's right. But that's the one about here, if you do choose to be that helper. If you really can't be kind to your mother, I suggest you back off and leave her alone, If you're going to be a bully, and some people are, old people become they're like intolerable. I'd probably kill people. Do you understand? If you're a really impatient kind of person, And people get irritated. I know one person, I know this daughter, who's been helping her old mother for years. She's tortured because she gets angry easily. And I can imagine you would. So you've got to be so careful, especially when they're dying, Do you understand, don't you? Not easy. So in order to ensure that attachment doesn't arise in your loved one's mind, especially when the time of death is close, okay, it's best not to allow anyone for whom they have strong attachment to be in their presence. I mean, this is a tough one. This is really a tough one because we don't have that view in our culture. All the family hover around, you know, the animals, thinking it's kind of love. It can be, but you've got to be wise, you know, and think of this person. And that's also where the thing is, you know, when we really do understand the Buddhist view about the mind, that when the person's in a coma, we just tend to assume they're not noticing. But this is just not true, you know. It's unbelievably important to keep the same energy in the room when they're in a coma, when they're asleep. Peaceful, quiet, only the Dharma sounds. Not any garbage, any emotion, any dramas, out the room, please. I like to think of it as their gig, you know. But everything should be perfect for that person. Everything in that room, every bottle, every bit of medicine, every picture, every sound, everything, every person should be only for the benefit of that person, to help them not be attached, not be fearful, not be distressed. This is a massive responsibility. More than just their body, you know. Not their body at all. We're talking about their mind. That's the point. To understand that one, you know. There's a nice little prayer in here Rinpoche has, prayer for helpers. May whoever sees me, touches me, remembers me, thinks about me, talks about me, praises me, even criticizes me, may they immediately be free from all spirit harms and negative karma, and may they complete the path and achieve full enlightenment as soon as possible. So you should think this, you know. Use your wisdom, as Rinpoche says. The more you understand what you are supposed to do for your own death, the more you'll know how to help your loved one. So all this is obviously for oneself. And then you know how to help your loved one. Then you know how to help, you know. When you know how to die with a peaceful mind, you can confidently help your loved ones. You need to be skillful in advising your loved ones according to their state of mind, their background, their life, whether they're non-believer or have a religion or whatever, you know. You've got to be so skillful. And even among Buddhists, like I said, one of my friends recently, she didn't want to know about being treated like a dying person. You know, get out of my face, you know, I'll do my own prayers, my own medicine. So you've got to know how much affection, how close, how distant, you've got to be aware, you know, how to help the person. But the bottom line is your presence should make them peaceful and virtuous. That's the bottom line. They should trust you, you know. And of course the major point here, which is not the Western view, is that, remember, as I mentioned before, even if in the book, even if the dying person doesn't have any, you know, doesn't think about Buddha's teachings or anything, it's still good for them to hear the practices. But receiving the benefits of reciting or hearing them doesn't require devotion. So even when you're unconscious, when the mouse is there, the ant, the baby, the senile grandma, having just the sound quietly of, say, mantras. And anyway, just the pure, peaceful sound is like magic. But not to mention that, because it hooks the energy of the Buddhas, you know, and brings them close. That's the way to think about it. It can help the person. Like I told you yesterday about my story about my friend Judy in a total deep coma. The only thing she could remember crystal clear was the words of these teachers that she'd had, you know, her gurus, when I said the words. That's the only thing she remembered. The words, you know. This can be powerful. So make the place beautiful, like I was saying, you know. And then, of course, if they're like a typical one, if you're Buddhist, then anything in the room, like I said before, for these two senses are so powerful. And the touch, the third one, touch. So Rinpoche is really into all this, all these different practices you can have, things to see, things to hear, things to touch, you know, that can leave virtuous imprints in the mind. Keep the room really nice, and no tobacco. Tobacco is said to be a really heavy kind of herb that attracts very negative spirits, according to the Buddhist view. Because it's to do with attachment, you know. It attracts very heavy spirits, negative beings. So no tobacco. Don't bring anywhere near, don't bring your tobacco breath. Yes?
Just a point of clarification, Robina. It says smoke here. Does that not count?
What?
In this...
it says no tobacco.
No tobacco.
Yeah.
So it says smoke.
Yeah, then?
Just to clarify.
Yeah.
Does that mean that incense isn't allowed, or that is...
It's not tobacco, is it?
No.
It says
So
tobacco. Hey,
yeah.
Jesse, read the heading. What's it say?
No tobacco.
Well, then why are you asking?
Because it doesn't mention tobacco.
God almighty, a heading implies what's underneath it and
Sure.
refers to the heading. You know,
Sure.
You can write things, don't you?
Yes.
Jesse? Come on, girl. Boy.
Just clarifying.
No, that's not clarifying. That's an unnecessary question. I'm not being mean to him. I know Jesse. Jesse, I don't believe you. The heading says tobacco.
Yeah, but it doesn't mention tobacco there.
The heading says tobacco.
Yes.
It says, do not allow anyone to smoke anywhere near the dying person. Does it
Sure.
say that in your book?
Yes.
So who smokes incense around here lately? You smoke incense? Jesse, come on. Leave it.
Sure. I understand.
I'm very happy you understand. Thank you for your question.
Maybe
Are you clear
just-
now?
Yes.
What? Yes?
Perhaps Jesse would like something like a mechanistic explanation of why tobacco is harmful.
No, he didn't ask that. Shush, you mind your own business. She's a helpful girl as well. No, darling, he doesn't
I
ask
was just
that.
wondering if it was...
Oh, God almighty, can we
Smoke
leave this alone?
in
Shut
general,
up.
yeah.
Just shut up. Excuse me. Excuse me. You better keep smiling. I get accused of abuse sometimes. Was that abusive? No? Are you sure?
I like these debates.
Just leave it.
Okay. Okay, so no and also no pets and no animal skins. I mean, we don't have animal skins. Tibetans love their animal skins, probably. We don't have animal skins. We might have, Keep them out of the way. Because remember she says, you shouldn't allow any cats and dogs in the room, especially cats. It said that their hair's polluted.
Not my cats.
Everybody thinks their cat's a bodhisattva. I've never met a person who doesn't think their cat's special. Like their babies. So Rinpoche says, and he's quoting a book here, quite a lot. He quotes this particular book that was published by the Tibetans to help in Dharamsala for their Tibetan people to remember, to know all their traditions and things. Tibetan ceremonies for the dead. The author says that if the person who is dying is lying on an animal skin, you should remove it before they die. The same as if they're wearing an animal skin or are covered by one. It says that being around animal skins at the time of death makes transference of consciousness. A particular practice is when you can actually encourage the consciousness to leave for a pure land. It makes it very difficult. And also they say that the hair of cats, it can attract spirits. Cats particularly, their energy is very kind of polluted. You can still be attached to your pet. It's all right. It's okay. It's like saying you're attached to your snake. It doesn't mean the snake won't eat you, does it?
No.
So we're just pointing out a characteristic. And this is according to these Tibetans, And of course a calm and peaceful environment. You must not create a situation that disturbs your loved one's mind, makes them angry or upset. Don't have anyone emotional in the room, especially when death is close. It's best that people don't cry within hearing distance of your loved one. This type of thing, And quiet, quiet. I probably wouldn't be any good in a death room at all. I mean, they say even, I've heard, I know people's experiences who work with the dying, that when you're dying, because your mind, literally your mind's going from gross to subtle. So your mind becomes unbelievably sensitive. The tiniest noise can be beyond distressing.
Venerable Robina.
Yeah.
Is that Is that timing of not crying in front of the person?
Can't hear you, darling, sorry.
Is that timing very limited to when they can still hear, like their ears are still working at that stage of death?
What's the subject of your sentence?
I'm sorry, not having people crying in the room.
No, the whole time, even though, like I said, okay, your senses stop. But, all the time we're reporting all these experiences of people having out-of-body experiences, people in their dreams hearing what's going on. You remember that? Mm-hmm. I told you that experience I had as a retreat. So even though the ear consciousness has ceased, I heard everything. So the mind is capable, even though it's disembodied, is capable of seeing and hearing. The subtle mind is. So then that's the point.
So those 3 days after they're...
Totally peaceful, quiet, like a shrine room. Absolutely, absolutely, absolutely. More than anything. Yes,
Thank you.
Exactly.
Quiet refrigerator.
Huh?
A quiet refrigerator.
A quiet refrigerator, that's right, a quiet refrigerator. So the next section is what the different practices. So what to see and touch. Rinpoche is really into all these things. He's got all these practices, So see holy images. Again, remember everything we see and hear leaves imprints, leaves imprints, leaves imprints. So show statues or pictures of the gurus and the Buddhas, or if it's Jesus they love, whatever. show them, and then Rinpoche's into showing mantras, all these different mantras. He's got so many. He's discovered mantras that no one else has heard of. It took so long to work out all these mantras, you know. Touch holy things, like touch texts. One of his big ones is have text on the body, you know, like with Catholics when we had, you know, what do you call it? Scapulars, that's right, same deal. And then stupa, have stupas, prayer wheels, blessing cords. Oh, I haven't got one on me. Yes, here. You know those red cords you have on you? They're blessed by, so they're good to put on the body as well. On your dead animals as well.
Yeah.
Like if you might have a, you know, you can carry blessing cords with you. Like say the dead kangaroo, you get off and you put the cord, you put the blessing cord, or you put mantras on the kangaroo's body. It can help. Or you say mantras in its ear, you know. And there's another practice later on. Rinpoche has one of the things when he does all his mantras all day, he has talcum powder or seeds, and then after all his mantras, because you bless your breath, and then you blow on it. So then he says he stops and puts that onto the dead animals. You know, you can sprinkle it on the body of the loved one as well as the dead animals. Any animals you meet, or any ants or whatever, or the dead cockroach, or the dead mouse, whatever. Next one is what to think about. And there's lots of different things in here Rinpoche mentions, you know. One of the first ones, of course, is make sure your loved one has given away their possessions. I mean, that's obviously for us, we have a will. And that's very powerful because we are so attached to our things. And this can become quite difficult, you know. So really important in your mind to have given it all away, truly have let go of it. And don't use it like politics, like some people do with a family. You know, you give this lot and that lot because you're creating all this division. Just give it away, let go. And one of the powerful practices to do after the person's died, if they haven't given everything away, give everything away. It's so beneficial for their karma to give everything away. Give it all away. Consciously give it away, you know. It's very interesting stories about spirits. There's wonderful stories, actually, very funny. The type of rebirth, you know, is spirits as due to intense attachment and grasping. And so anyway, this is one of a Lama, Geshe Lama Kontrog. Did he ever come here? Gabe? Geshe Lama Kontrog. He never came to Adelaide. Oh, he came to Australia in the 90s. He was at Chenrezig. He never came here. This amazing yogi. You know the one I'm talking about? Okay. Well, he's an amazing yogi who left Tibet, you know, soon after. Then he spent years and years in caves. He was naked, no clothing, no food, no sleep. An amazing holy being. Lama Zopa said he lived in Vajrayogini's Pure Land, you know. So anyway, he after Lama Yeshe passed away at Kopan in 84, suddenly this Lama turned up. He was an old friend of Lamas from the monasteries in Tibet, you know. This old Lama turned up and people wondered who this country bumpkin was. He'd spent his years, you know, naked in caves in the 6 foot of snow in the winter with no clothing and no food, so he looked pretty rough, bit rough, you know. People thought he was this country bumpkin. Well, he was Vajrayogini, living in the Pure Lands. So anyway, he turned up at Kopan, and as Lama Zopa said, when Lama Yeshe passed away, all the smiles at Kopan went away. And when Geshe Lama Kontrog came, all the smiles came back. People adored him there. So he passed away in 2001. Anyway, the point is, he lived up in the mountains up there. This highly evolved being, bodhicitta, emptiness, clairvoyance, all this business, right? Whatever. So there's this wonderful stories about spirits. There's one nun who, you know, when people get possessed, they call it, you know, when people hear voices. Well, often that's spirits in the Buddhist view. You know, you actually are hearing voices. Spirit beings whom you have some karma with use your body, possess you and harm you, you know. There's many terrible stories. So this particular story, this one nun, he was up in one of his caves and these nuns came up crying, Annie Tenzin's gone crazy, Annie Tenzin's gone crazy. Annie, they use that word for nun. So he said, okay, it's cool, I can go down and help her, you know. So he went down the 12 hours down. He went down there half the time because he had such control over all his subtler energies, he was able to walk on the wind. He'd ride the wind. They can do that, you know, so he doesn't have to touch the ground. So he sailed down there on the wind. People saw him do this when he wasn't noticing, you know. When you have these tantric yogis have complete control over the body and the mind, so they can manipulate the energies of the universe. This is how they talk. So anyway, he got down there, and there's this nun in the bed with other nuns, and supposedly, we'll take this as a given, she's possessed by this spirit. And she's, you know, and he comes up to her, and because the spirit, they're very strong, got masses of grasping and attachment. This is what their suffering is. It's intensely strong. And their minds, are conjoined with air energy. They haven't got bodies. They're like flitting from pillar to post, driven by attachment. 1 billion times stronger than ours, more distressing. And so guess what you attach to? You attach to things, aren't we? So anyway, this nun, the spirit in the nun's body, he wants to know what he wants. That's what they ask. So Geshe-la said to him, the spirit, what do you want? And the spirit in the body of the nun with a deep voice said, I want my pink thermos with the white flowers. I want my pink thermos with the white flowers. Sure enough, there it was. And the nuns remembered this villager who died recently had given this nun a pot of the thermos of tea, but she forgot to give it back. Well, because they're really poor up there. And anyway, he's attached to his thermos. Well, he dies with attachment to his pathetic thermos. So please be careful, people. That's just a thermos, okay? We've got houses of things, wardrobes of things, bank full of things, safes full of things, right? This is just a thermos. So died with attachment. So he's running to get his thermos, so he has to go in the nun, you know. And he's completely distressed. So anyway, because again I knew who the spirit was, what they do is they in this case, they give the thermos away, make it useful. Generosity, give it away. Generosity for the sake of the poor person. But I know another story, I haven't finished the story yet, but another story, one time in Kopan Monastery, during one of these courses, one girl there went wacky, you know, people get wacky when they go to spiritual things. So he said, they went to see him, guess on a contract, and he said, oh, she's possessed. But you'll find something in her luggage that's linked to the spirit. So they found this Jewish object, and the girl said that her father had given it to her and got it from they were Jewish, bought it in an antique store. Well, I have second thoughts now about second-hand things because you bring the bloody spirit with you, you know. So anyway, she was completely berserk with this spirit possessing her. And so what they do in this case, and I've seen it many times, because he didn't know who the spirit was, they had no connection. So they shout at the spirit to make them go. And so he's beating her with a shoe. The poor girl's being beaten with a shoe, and he's shouting at the spirit in Tibetan. I mean, they must be multilingual because they can all hear them. You know, saying, they say, we know all about you. There's no reason to keep you here. You go now. That's right. They've got to throw the object away as far as possible to break the connection. Then you go, and they threaten. You know, this can help the spirit go. I heard Lama Zopa. He used very peaceful methods. There's one lady in Singapore. He spent hours and hours trying to work out what the spirit would want, what would make them leave. You know. So finally the spirit accepted a cup of tea and they agreed to go. But some spirits won't go. And that's why people have nightmarish suffering. A friend of mine recently, unbelievable. I mean, I took it as a given that it was spirit. She remembered the day, all of a sudden, in Canada, I've been emailing me, you know, and all of a sudden she remembered the moment, sitting in a cafe, suddenly something strongly went into her left side, she remembers, and from that second, these voices, many beings, she said, and she'd be tortured. She'd email me, she could hardly think, she could hardly see, they were strangling her. I believed it completely, you know, totally accepted. So she was very clear. And now I think her father's locked her up and I can't get any contact with her, you know. And Lama Zopa did prayers, nothing seemed to make them go away. The karma's so strong. It's like karmic connection between people. When you can have a person who stalks you and abuses you in a human form, well, these are spirits, you know, whom you've got strong karma with, whom you've harmed from past lives. Anyway, attachment, spirits of attachment, you know. So give your things away. Give things away. Have no connection because you're going to run after them. You get born as a spirit and you want them back. There's no help at all. People, you know, ghosts who haunt houses, it's exactly this. It's exactly the point, you know. You're attached to that place. And that's our worst delusion, isn't it, in our world? Look at us. We might be raping and murdering too many people. Look at us, though. It's attachment to things, holding on, clinging, you know.
Excuse me.
Yep. It's lunchtime, not yet. Yes.
My daughter died many years ago overseas, and most of her possessions
Yes.
were given away.
Yes. Wonderful.
Invited her friends.
Yes.
It was after a year, I'd say, but I
Yes.
invited her friends to come and take her things. But in the house there are still many letters that she wrote and
I
that were
understand,
written to
darling.
her, and
Yes.
photographs and things like that. And I'm just
That's
and
okay.
photograph albums.
But they're
And
your possessions, not hers.
Okay,
See,
I'm
they're
just
not her possessions, they're
wondering
your
the
possessions, darling.
The distinction.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's okay. They're your possessions.
Well, it's
To remind you of your beloved daughter, you know, that's okay.
sure.
That's
So
fine.
I just wouldn't want to think
No,
that
I
that was an
understand, darling.
attachment that
No.
was holding her in any way.
No, that's your attachment. No, that's not hers. That's yours, darling, and that's
Yeah,
your
I know
effect.
it's mine,
But that's
but-
okay. That one, they know. Don't have any fears about that. No,
Okay.
sweetheart.
But my question about that is when I do want to let go of certain of those things,
Yes.
I've always felt that it needed to be some sort of simple but sacred
I understand.
act.
Absolutely.
So
yes.
what would you recommend?
You mean you have,
in-
besides her letters and photos, you have other things like jewels or something? Or something?
Just
jewels are easy because they can be given away.
Or they can even be given to put into statues.
Yes.
That'd be so special. But otherwise, I'll tell you what, have you got any of her ashes?
Not now. We release them at we release them at a property.
Okay, you got, so then
We
even
know where they
got
are.
nothing of hers, because what you get, one of the practices which I recommend, which we're going to talk about later, or do it now, is you get any of their, even, it doesn't say their possessions, it says usually their ashes or their hair or their bones, and you mix it with, you have them made into statues or stupas, so that becomes unbelievably blessed. I'll go into it in more detail. But my feeling is, why not even, just my own thought now, why not even burn her things
That's what I
and
was
then have
wondering.
a little stupa made, or a little statsa, those little Buddhist images, the tsatsa, the little images, and have it mixed with the plaster and have it just blessed. Just as a ritual thing for yourself. It makes it so holy and so special, you know. Does that make sense? Yes. But don't you worry about your attachment. It's okay. So then, if they have faith in their guru or the Buddha, talk about that. If they have faith in God, talk about it. And don't be scared. We get very fearful, you know. And you don't have to start sort of shoving God down your grandma's throat. But you can talk about how you love God. Maybe, you know, I've been talking about God late, you know, and she'll be so happy to hear. She might say, "Oh, shut up," or "Oh, really?" And you'll listen, you'll hear whether she wants to know more. Maybe because we know ourselves when we're sick or old, and because we've spent our lives not working on our minds, especially when we're sick or old, you can't control any thoughts. And it's full of anxiety and guilt and you're bad and your worries and your fears. So you've got to be brave to check what's happening and put positive things in it. And if they do have some connection with God, remind them, you know, and talk about yourself, not putting it onto them, and they might like it. Be brave though, you've got to try things. Don't get worried. Talk about Amitabha's Pure Land, or heaven. There's one of the texts in here, Lama Tsongkhapa's description of Amitabha's Pure Land. Read it to people, you know. Heaven, the same. I remember Nancy Reagan, when she died, because she was very attached to Ronnie, wasn't she? And she went to Billy Graham, and she said, "Can you promise me I will see Ronnie in heaven?" He said, "Yes." So she relaxed. Let's hope she didn't go to the lower realms out of attachment. Let's hope she went to somewhere where someone looking like Ronnie was there. Let's hope. Buddha manifesting as Ronnie for Nancy's sake. There's also, anyway, another interesting experience about spirit type thing. I'll go back to finish the thermos. Yeah, what happened was, because Genla knew who the villager was, and the villager knew Genla. Because when Genla was coming in the door, because he's a spirit, he doesn't have a gross body, so he's clairvoyant. These spirits are clairvoyant. And he knew Genla was coming, and he felt ashamed. No, in the nun, you know, he said, no, Genla, he didn't want to look, you know, because it was his lama. So anyway, Genla knew it could help him. And then at some point, before he finished the job of helping the spirit leave, the spirit was crying, saying, "I can't find my way. I can't find my way." That's very moving, actually, because, you know, it's like in a dream. You know, in a dream, you flit from pillar to post, don't you? There's no sense of space and time. There's no sense of kind of being in charge of anything. You just kind of here and there, you fly, you're down, you're up, you fall. It's weird, you know. Well, that's how spirits are, but 10 times more suffering. No sense of what's going on. Driven by attachment. Every thought. You know how our mind just flits from pillar to post? Well, their mind is conjoined with air. So literally they flit from pillar to post. It's intense suffering. Some spirits can be really, really unbelievable agony of suffering. Attachment suffering, you know. Okay? Anyway, this other story. Right, I was going to tell another story. This is a bit different story. This is very interesting. I saw years ago on the web, somebody showed me, 20 years ago, more, 25 years ago, a story about some Christian doctor in America who interviewed his patients, and they've got near-death experiences, but not white light ones, hell-like. Because everybody thinks just, you know, it's only lovely and white light. But this is very interesting. So there are two stories, and I think I got a bit mixed up. But anyway, one of them was this fellow. Oh, I forgot your thing again. I'm so sorry. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I'm doing fine.
I shout loud enough, don't I? Good. So this one story was this fellow who was a businessman. He said he was a bit mean to his wife and, you know, kind of selfish. When he told the story of what happened, he was very sick. He was in hospital and he's waiting for his heart operation. And he was really anxious about when they were going to come and get him. And all of a sudden he found himself by the bed talking to his wife, And he remembered he got mad at her because she didn't respond. And then he looked at the bed and he saw a body in the bed, and he kind of vaguely twigged that it was his body, but he had left his body basically. So he's walked. Then he heard these voices in the corridor. Come on, John. He said, oh, good, they're taking me to my operation. So he said they're all these creepy, crawly, nice, and then gradually becoming brutal and ripping his flesh and abusing him. But so first of all, I find this very fascinating. He said the walk along that corridor took as long as walking from here to Alaska. Well, even if it was like next door state, except Alaska's on the other side of Canada, isn't it? I think, isn't it? Anyway, he said, so in other words, I think you can't be out of your body very long, can you, before your brain dead, right? Do you understand what I'm saying? So he probably has a few moments, but his experience of time, isn't that interesting? It took as long as walking from here to Alaska. So anyway, what happened was, after they'd abused him and ripped his flesh, then they left him. And he said he was in the depths of darkness and despair, the likes of which he'd never known. And he didn't know what to do. So he said he hadn't prayed since a little boy, so he tried to pray. And he's, Our Father who art in heaven, and he couldn't go any further. Then he tried, the Lord is my shepherd, and he couldn't go any further. And then he just cried out, Jesus, help me. So he said some way over there, a tiny light came, and it got bigger and more powerful and more radiant, completely healed him, completely blissful. He said if he'd been in his real body, it would have consumed him. It was so intense. It was Jesus, completely embraced with bliss and love. Of course, he wanted to go with Jesus, but Jesus told him to go back. And he did. And he served Jesus. And you would, wouldn't you? I mean, So the other story, so this is the interesting point. This one, so, like a Buddhist, if you've got a Buddhist imprint, you wouldn't have been calling out for Jesus. You'd call out Green Tara, and guess who'd come? It'd be Green Tara. Well, he'd get a shock if he saw Green Tara, wouldn't he? A naked green lady. He'd get a big surprise. So it's karmic imprints on your mind, whatever you're familiar with. The shape that is coming. You understand my point? It's a shape with someone you're familiar with. So if the Buddhist will cry out, Mother Tara, well, she'll come. You'll see that karmic vision, You create the karmic vision. So the other story was that he was an alcoholic. And he said he was mean to his wife as well. They're both mean to their wives. So basically he died and he was walking along a tunnel. They all talk about tunnels. But at the end of his tunnel was not white light, believe me. There was this conflagration that was hell. And all his friends who died, he saw them there. Now clearly, if you're in fire, you clearly can't be in your human body. But that's the karmic vision people have. Like, when you see a house that's haunted, you see the 18th century lady, 18th century clothes, don't you? Because that's how she looked then. So we have the karmic vision of that person. So we have the karmic vision of his own friends in this fire, this conflagration, And they were shouting at him, go back, don't come here, go back, go back, go back. Well, he went back and he served Jesus as well. And again, you would, wouldn't you? So this is like all these experiences you hear about out of body and people they all interpret their things differently, They all they might call it God, or they might call, because that's what you call it, because that's what you know. Do you understand? But the main point for me is the constant in this is there's more than just the body. There's sort of people's experiences are constantly proving it, but when you're cynical, you think it's a lot of rubbish, they're all insane, The entire world's insane if you're a materialist. They're all idiot and deluded. I mean, the arrogance actually of materialists is quite shocking, isn't it? Because they think they know the truth, So it's very interesting. I think that's the point for me. How you interpret it, if it's Jesus or God or heaven or hell or, whatever, but the experiences of it are so constant. It's very interesting. Okay, just want to tell you that, it was all. So next, talk about your loved one's qualities. This is the most unbelievable gift you can give all day, every day. Start now. Don't wait till they're dying. You understand? So even if your mother's been mean, I don't care. Praise her. Thank her. Write her a letter before she dies. I love you, Mum. I love you. And thank you for being my mother. Thank you for being my father. Even though if they abused you, I don't care. Okay, if you're not ready, don't. I'm not forcing. You have a strong karmic history with your mummy and daddy, Intense history from countless lives. Just heal it, fix it, and lift their little hearts up, Isn't it? I mean, my mother was tormented by the guilt of what she didn't do right, Tormented. That's what mummies do, isn't it? Thank her, love her, thank her, thank her. Talk about compassion. Depends on the person's mind. You know, talk about everybody else's suffering. Maybe you don't want to know. Depends on the person, what works for their mind, you know. Some people love to talk about compassion, love to do Tonglen practice, because, it's incredible. Next lot is what to hear. This is examples, you know. But the key one is, if they like God, talk about heaven. If they like Buddha, talk about the Guru, talk about Pure Lands. And talk about their good qualities. That's the key one. That's a miraculous gift you can give to anybody. Praise them, thank them. So special, you know. You know yourself, when you hear one person says one kind word to you, it's like nectar on our heart, isn't it? And we're not brave enough to say it to ourselves. We need someone else to say it to us. So that's just how they are. Flood them with love and kindness. Even if you're a nurse in a hospital, I'm sure you did a wonderful job in your life. You've been such a good person. You gave your life to other people. You were such a good wife, blah, blah, blah. Say it. It's unbelievable. Gift, nectar, you know, makes their mind virtuous, makes their mind peaceful, lifts their heart up. What to hear? Well, mantras, day and night. Teachings, if you're a Buddhist, day and night. Hear the names of the Buddha. Hear mantras. Again, this list, let's talk about the longest chapter, working out all the names of the mantras. It's so confusing. Millions of them, which has got so many. Whichever one you like, you know. Next one, what to meditate on. Rinpoche's made up lots of meditations. Like Medicine Buddha. I mean, some of you Buddhists know. He says Medicine Buddha before, middle, end, advance, all the time. Best practice. If you choose one practice of all these 87 in this book, choose Medicine Buddha. Best, they say. Best, best. The mantra or the practice. Best. Just the best. Amazing. For everything. Meditate on Tonglen, that amazing meditation of giving and taking, for people with a brave mind, Rinpoche said, to use their own suffering and their own death as a way of wanting to give to others, you know, take on the suffering of others. Very special. It's amazing practice. Then, okay, meditate on the death process, which we didn't mention much yesterday. I just mentioned very briefly as 8 stages. You know, Jessie asked me if we can go into the more detail, but it's in the book. But it's a really good practice. So, you know, you read through it. It's written down in the book as a brief meditation. So to your loved one, you just read it through so they can think about it. And then the more you're familiar with that process, you know, even if at the time of death you can't actually experience it as it's happening, but maybe some imprints could be there, you know. It's really helpful to do that. Of course, that's for the person who's a Buddhist. You know, there's lots of meditations Rinpoche's got here. Sleep. There's, you know, like if you really love Jesus, you have them Jesus on the pillow and they're sleeping in Jesus' lap. Or Our Lady, whoever you like, you know. Or the Guru, the Buddha, whatever. Meditate on emptiness. Meditate on the emptiness of death. Meditate on the emptiness of the mind. Help your loved one with their daily practices, especially Buddhists, you know. Know all their daily practices and recite them for them. Because when you're sick and old and dying, you can't put 2 and 2 together, you know. It's so good to do that. Or help your loved one do that practice called transference of consciousness. Some people actually get the initiation and they attempt to do it. But that's quite advanced, to have such control that as you're dying, you can kind of cause your consciousness to leave through the crown chakra. You're pretty together if you can do that. Then there's all the purification practices, of course. You know, you recite the 35 Buddhas. You can do the 4 opponent powers of Vajrasattva. There's a beautiful practice called Samaya Vajra for those who've got vows and commitments to purify your broken commitments. You can offer tzok. You can do a self-initiation for people with highest yoga tantra. All these practices. They're all in the book. All in the book. And now finally, what to do during the hours before death, which clearly means you've got to recognize it. Who has lots of experience with dying people? Have you had that many dying people? So do you notice that it is probably, as Rinpoche seems to suggest, that it's maybe 2 to 3 hours before they stop breathing, when the actual 8 stages start? When the eyes stop blinking and that kind of thing, which is an indication that it's a couple of hours before death, Rinpoche says. What's your experience?
It varies, Robina.
Tell me about what you've observed.
Well, it varies depending upon whether...
Can we have the microphone, Jessie, darling?
Yeah.
Tell me what... Because it's very hard. They never say how long it takes, but Rinpoche seems to indicate. One of the signs, he said... Let me just say this first. He says... You know, I remember I said the first of the senses to go is the eye consciousness. Yeah, the eyes. That's a sense, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, right. That's right. The element, the body element, the body, the earth element, and the eyes. So Rinpoche says one of the signs of imminent death, maybe a couple of hours, he says, is if the eyes are open and they don't blink. So that's an example, he says. So tell me about what you've seen then.
Or sometimes the eyes are closed. Is that on?
Yes.
Yes. Or sometimes the eyes are closed.
Yeah.
It's the most clear sign for me personally is the breathing of the patient, and so that their breathing pattern changes, and so you can roughly determine that a patient is close to death because they breathe in and then they breathe out really a
long and slow,
breath.
yeah.
Yes.
And then shorter in
And then-
between.
yes.
So that's an hour, a day? I mean, what do you say?
It can, generally speaking, it can be a couple of days beforehand, actually.
The breathing
in my
changes.
experience. The breathing changes.
But is that the actual 8 stages? This is my point. It's a very specific thing, these 8 stages. I mean, you could argue we're dying slowly anyway. People
Yeah.
get senile, they lose their memory, their senses go. But that's not the beginning of the actual death process. So that's what I'm asking. I mean, can you really be clear about that?
No, I
No.
personally am not clear
No.
about it. I mean, and I'm not there for an extended
No.
period of time. I'll go in and out.
Yes.
But as you know, nurses and medical practitioners, you can generally tell by the breathing that the patient's coming close to taking their last breath. But yes, usually they're inert, not
Yeah.
responding. Their eyes may be open, but more generally they're
Closed.
closed.
I understand.
But one thing that's quite noticeable to me is when the patient actually's breathing stops, is that then the body tends to relax. So there's quite often a change in expression in the
When
face.
the breathing stops.
When the breathing stops, not immediately, but
No.
if you're able to leave them,
Yeah.
then quite often there's depending on the type of death they've had,
course.
but often they can look very peaceful.
Yeah.
Sometimes.
I
not.
understand.
Yeah.
Do you notice a difference? Can you tell sometimes that the mind goes quickly? Can you tell the difference between a mind being there and a mind not being there? People often say you can
no,
see the difference.
I'm not very experienced with that, but I do know that I try to,
Right.
well, if I have the opportunity, and it's known on the ward that I like to do this. That
Same
if I have the
answers.
opportunity to have some time with a patient after their breathing has stopped and after their family has left, then I'll go in and say medicine Buddha mantras, and I've got
Okay.
blessing cords. And,
Yes,
and
okay.
I do try. I mean, I don't know if I do it or not, but I do try to.
When do you do that?
you know,
This one, the crown.
Yeah.
When? No, when?
Just if I have the opportunity. I can't time these things because but it's generally after the breathing has stopped.
But how long normally? Okay, because the way Lama Zopa says it, once the breath has stopped, and just before the body has to go is when you do that. You leave the
Yeah.
body as long as you can.
Yes.
And then only when you have to force to be moved the body, then you do this one.
Yeah, but for me it's a timing thing. So if
I
I
understand.
do it when the opportunity arises. Yeah.
But you do it very vigorously. Don't be polite about it.
Well, I do have if there's
Really
hair,
hard.
Some of these patients don't have hair.
Oh, so you tap.
Yeah,
tap
or
really
tap.
strongly. Don't be
Yeah.
polite.
But I do have.
What do you
my
do with this?
Blessing cords as well, which
You
I
pop around their neck.
take off. Well, I usually
Oh,
put
you-
it on their crown as well.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
And you take it off again. Then
Yeah,
it's recycled
I
for the next one.
Yeah,
That's right.
put it back on.
So you should, if you haven't got any other blessed stuff or anything, you stick on their crowns like the blessed substances.
No.
No.
No, I don't usually have
Mantras
anything
on their
with me.
body. Bring out your little kit, you know.
Yeah.
Her little secret nurse's kit.
The secret nurse, it is very, nobody ever knows what I...
Your friends don't know you do this?
well, my nursing friends don't.
Okay, good. I see. Okay. All right. So any other... Yes,
Just
tell me.
my-
Yes, tell me,
my
darling. Tell me
Burmese
your
cat.
observation. Yes.
Okay, I've been with some dying people, but I'm not
Close to
in
now.
nursing. I'm not in nursing now, but my 18-and-a-half-year-old Burmese cat died the middle of last year.
Yes.
And so leading up to that, his breathing changed, but then he did lose eye consciousness because I did do a couple of things like that, and you could see that he wasn't
Yes.
blinking,
Yes.
so
Yes.
that had gone.
Okay.
But he had the mantras going,
Okay, fantastic.
and
Perfect.
I had photographs of
Yep.
the Dalai Lama.
There you go.
And
That's it.
medicine Buddha
Right.
around him.
Yes.
So
Oh, lucky
they
cat.
just thought, yeah, well,
Lucky
you try to
pussy.
make it.
Yeah,
Well, it's
exactly.
nice to have that information that you want to do these
Exactly,
things.
that's right. Because I think that's the thing. We mightn't even be Buddhists, but I think we all feel, what can I do? We want to feel like we can do something. You know? We all feel we want to do something. Even to hear about having prayers made, if you're not a Buddhist, or even having blessing the ashes or something so special. I'll discuss that, after lunch or something. That's
And I
good.
was fortunate that I could have him home overnight.
Yes.
So the next morning, And I turned him on his right side after
Oh, you did, well
breathing
done.
had stopped
Good.
because that's the way the Buddha
That's right.
That's
died.
the way the
That's right.
Buddha
Exactly.
died.
Yeah.
And the next morning, and so later on I made a cup of tea and I went in and sat with him and we had the mantras going.
Good.
So I left him like that until the next morning when I was able to wash his body. And
Why'd you
of course
wash his body?
Well, well, they do pee and stuff like that, so
Okay, but he
it
doesn't care anymore.
doesn't matter.
Hopefully he's
It does
gone.
not matter. It's how I.
Well, hopefully, did you check his mind had gone though? You didn't
Well,
check the
I-
heart here.
Well, no, I didn't do that because I
Okay.
wasn't aware. But I did tap probably as best I could, but not as
Okay.
vigorous.
But you didn't check the mind had gone though.
No, because
Okay.
I probably didn't know what
No,
to
I
do
understand
there.
that. That's right. Exactly. I understand.
So I
That's a
just
good one
figured
to
that I
know.
did the best that I could.
I understand that. Yeah. Good.
And it was.
Okay.
I felt so happy that I could have him there overnight
Oh, of
before
course.
before he went into the fridge.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's exactly right. Totally right. Exactly.
Can I just ask another question? I seem to have spoken a lot about this, about the animals, and you talked about the best thing to do for them. I've got like 2 dogs and 4 cats at home with their ashes waiting.
Make into. And I'll
So
discuss it.
can you do that later?
We'll do that.
Thank
It's
you.
called Jangwa. It's an amazing practice. It's the most. Rinpoche really waxes lyrical about the benefit for the people, for the being of this practice. We'll discuss it later. Absolutely. Time for lunch. What happened? Oh yes. Okay. Yes. Yes. Talk to me.
When we're talking about the physical observation of very close to the end of life, I've
Yeah.
noticed that the peripheral circulation shuts down.
Tell me about what that means.
So the hands, the feet, the arms,
Yes. of
legs
course. Yes.
become cold.
Yes, that's right.
It's probably 3 to 4 hours before the death, and it's a very reliable, frequent occurrence.
Okay, this is perfect because it's exactly fitting with the Buddhist one. As the consciousness starts to go through the stages, yes, heat, but the third point is when the heat element ceases, and that's when the heat starts to leave the body. So that is a really good sign. Of course, I forgot about that. Because also what's interesting, by the way they say is, like I said before, the karmic seed that will determine your next life is triggered before you even stop breathing. And they say if you're going to be born in the lower realms, the heat leaves the head first and your feet stay toasty. And if you're going to be born in the upper realms, the feet get cold first and your head stays toasty. Not that you can make much difference to it once the karma's ripened. But yes, the limbs, the extremities being cold, that's a perfect sign. And that's where if you did check here, the heat would still be, the last place for the heat to go is the heart chakra.
That's right.
Yep, and you've tested that.
Oh, yes.
Okay, that's helpful. That's good. What about you and the heat? Have you noticed the heat business? Have you felt their toes and everything?
Yes, the feet get cold. Yeah.
And their heads, you've noticed the heat though. But in relation to how long before they stop breathing, that's what I'm asking. In relation to how long before they stop breathing is what I'm asking. Have you noticed the relationship of the heat? That's a really good point, thank you. Several hours,
I can't
you
say
said.
definitively.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right. Yes, sweetheart, yes.
One experience that I've noticed with people that are dying is, and it's quite interesting with talking about the earth element, is a feeling of total heaviness.
Yes.
In their arms and their legs.
There you go.
And often in their chest.
That's interesting.
And obviously their life energy is very low then anyway. But there's this real weight.
That's the earth, exactly.
they
That's what they say
feel.
about the earth element.
Yeah.
That the body becomes kind of looser but heavy, and like and the feeling you have, they say, is like you're sinking. And even Rinpoche says sometimes you almost can reach up. I remember that's a very interesting point. I remember one time when I got very sick in India. I had hepatitis and malaria. No one noticed the malaria because I had all these fevers, but I was bright yellow, right? But I had this malaria for like weeks, and I'd lost like 30 pounds in 10 days. I was in 50-degree Delhi with no air conditioning. I was completely out of my brain, I tell you. Curtis said, Rinpoche said I was close to death. I mean, I just felt terrible. I didn't know what close to death meant. But I remember the feeling of sinking into the bed. My body, the earth element was going, you know. I obviously didn't die yet, but the feeling of sinking, that's how they say the earth element, body very heavy, you know. It's interesting, isn't it? But what happened was my friends just saw me bright yellow and I figured it was fevers of my hepatitis, but they usually go after a few days, but I was just weeks, or days, probably 10 days, just hallucinating, completely hallucinating, these fevers, you know. And then someone saw me with a fever and they recognized immediately it was malaria. And then what happened was I knew I had to get out of India, I'd die otherwise. It was 50 degrees in Delhi, 50 degrees, you know. There was no air conditioning. I'll never forget it as long as I live. So my sister Jan was so kind from Brisbane. She flew overnight to Singapore to pick me up. And I mean, the airlines let me fly. I was bright yellow, you know. They let me fly. I was hallucinating in bright yellow. And they let me fly, thank goodness, to Singapore. And my sister picked me up. And then I took 6 months to hallucinate, to recuperate. And then I got malaria again the next year. Crawling on the ground up the hill to Copan, crawling. But I didn't take any of that medicine and my liver's completely fine again, I presume. Anyway, that was my story. So I think it's lunchtime, people. So talk about death, if you want, and whatever. Discuss these things. Bring up stories. It's nice to hear the stories, okay? And enjoy your lunch. And we just, okay. You enjoy your lunch. Enjoy your lunch. Go on. What? Oh, you're going to come here. Okay. Listen, would anybody... There's more than 30 of you here, but would you come up here? Please, Judy. I have these friends in prison I write to. I've known many of them for like 20 years, 18 years, right? And, oh my God, you did each one. That's amazing. Yeah. So what happened was, in America, they absolutely adore getting postcards. I can't tell you how they love getting postcards. So here's these postcards of Adelaide. They will just completely love, I can't tell you. So if you would like to, there's only about 30 blokes. Oh, you've written them all out, for God almighty sake, Judy. Look at you. Blimey. So Judy's written out each one.
It's been checked as well.
I've been checked as well. God help me. So if anybody would like to get it, take a piece of paper. There's like David Burtonshaw. He's in England, most in America. And some of them, like here's Yen Chu. So on the ones you're a bit ambivalent about how you address them, it's Dear Yen Chu. So write a postcard to say, here we are in Adelaide, we had a course with me, and hope you were here, something cute, and then sign it your name and Robina, so they know where it's from, you know, if you'd like. So there's 30 about. So here they are, and the names, grab a name and grab a postcard. And if you'd like to post it to the person in the USA, otherwise give it back and I'll mail it. Pay for the postage. Yeah, all right? You clear?
Yes.
If you'd like. They love getting postcards, I can't tell you. Thank you. There they are, Judy. Thank you, darling.
Thank you.
And I'll give my advertisements, more advertisements. We ran out of trek postcards I saw.
Oh, okay.
We're leading a trek to Laudo, you know, Lamazopa's place up in the mountains, next year, April, 15 days. That's April 5. Look up Laudo, maybe you're not. Anyway, Judy, whatever. There's a sign, she'll put a sign up. That's to raise money for Lamazopa's cave up there. $500 of the fare goes to there. And the other thing I do every year, which is the next one is in November, is a pilgrimage. I think you've done some with Dondram, haven't you? Here. Yes. Amazing. We did 3 weeks, starting in Kathmandu, and we go to all the holy places of the Buddha. And then next one is in November, I think. And every year we do that. That raises money for Liberation Prison Project. That's my advertisement. Thank you.